I'm Commissioner Cindy Mills, and I want to welcome you to our third annual Suicide Prevention Summit. As you're taking your seat, I want to thank the people that have helped me try to put this together tonight. If you will, stand up when I call your name. Teresa Stahn. Teresa is Executive Director of the LRJ Foundation. Laurie with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Laurie Cole, she couldn't be with us tonight. Sergeant Terry Hawkins, the CIT Coordinator for the Sheriff's Office. Keith Perchie, and I might not be saying your name right. He is the Division Chief of Training for the Forsyth County Fire Department. And Ruth Good, the Executive Director of United Way. Y'all help me thank them for their efforts. Tonight's meeting is a little different. This is our third Suicide Summit. And tonight, we're calling it From Stress to Success. And our first two, we were trying to get people here to talk about their experience dealing with suicide. And we have learned so much by learning about mental health ourselves and trying to bring awareness to the community. And just learning about mental health ourselves, this has evolved into what this is tonight. And it's really helped to make our community a better place. I really can say that truthfully, that we have evolved in what we're able to provide to the community, and you're going to see that tonight. And I've been invited by DBHDD to even go speak about what we're doing in the state as an example for other communities, and it's something I'm very proud of. When we started doing our drug council, we knew that drugs were a big issue, but and then we kept hearing more about mental health and more about, that we needed to do more in the community about mental health. And, not everybody that's got mental health issues are on drugs. And so we didn't want to confuse the two issues and let one get lost in the other. And I just participated recently in the Montana Institute. They had a group of kids that came in here in this very room, and they started talking to the kids about what they're seeing in school and the issue the kids are seeing and what they're dealing with. And I was watching them as they presented, and the drug council paid for this, and the issues, they kept getting up here, and it was really distressing to me to hear them talk about self-harm and stress, and how they could handle these things and how they could be better equipped to deal with them, and the things they were going to take back to school to try to deal with that. And I keep hearing more and more things of children at younger and younger ages, about suicide ideology, and kids, young ages, second grade, talking about anxiety. And I'm thinking, why does a child in second grade have anxiety? And why do they even know that word? And that we as a caring people need to start figuring out what we can do to empower kids and to make it better. And I think we live in a very caring community, a community that wants to help children and wants to try to offer support. And I think that this is just one way that we can do it. I think our school system's doing lots of different things with that. So this is our summit tonight, is about that very thing, how we can deal with stress and make it be success and turn that into it, and how we can empower not just our children, but our adults in their workplace. And so we're going to start tonight, and we're going to try to move through this next hour and a few minutes. And our first speaker tonight is Walker Tisdale. Walker has been here with us before. Walker works in this all the time. I'm going to let him tell more about himself, but he's got a bunch of letters after his name. He is Director of Suicide Prevention, Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Development with Disabilities, DBHDD. He's going to be providing an overview of the state's initiatives in suicide prevention and give us some updates. They've just updated their plan, and Walker, come on up and help us. Thank you.
Oh, stop.
All right, good evening. How's everyone? So I am a Pisces and I like verbal affirmation. So I'm going to ask you again, how is everyone?
Awesome.
Thank you, thank you. So with that, can I? All right, perfect. So I'm Walker Tisdale. I do work at DBHDD. I was going to say WDIB. My former life, I used to be a reporter in Detroit at WDIB. So you just kind of go into it. Part of my job is, a big part is I get to come outside of the office and to come into the community and speak to folks like you around suicide prevention and talk about what we can do together, talk about some of the risk factors and protective factors and resources. So tonight what I'm going to do is to share what we're doing at DBHDD and how you can get involved, talk about how you can access some of those resources, and then hopefully we'll have time for a few questions, okay? Okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. So just to give you a little bit of history about our suicide prevention program. It wasn't all that recent, in the recent past before suicide prevention came to DBHDD. Before it was housed in public health. And in many circles it is still considered only or strictly a public health issue. But it came over to DBHDD in 2015, and in that time it was established, I became the first director. And so, yay, right? Mm-hmm. But also our staff grew, and we were able to do more things. And so part of that is that we were able to get more federal funding to do more work around youth suicide prevention, to work with our suicide prevention coalitions. Are there any folks representing a coalition in the room this evening? A show of hands. Marty? All right, so this is a plug. So one of the things that we really wanted to see more of is more community grassroots response to suicide prevention as well as information sharing. And one way we have found to be most effective in doing that is through coalitions. So if you know of a coalition that's on another topic in your community, maybe it's focused on HIV and AIDS, or it's focused on some other health issue, or maybe it's just focused on civic engagement, ask them to consider taking up the idea or the topic of community education around suicide prevention. And we at DBHDD can come in to share resources and information to train them so they can make an impact in their community, okay? So that's one of the things I want to implore you before you leave. Also, I keep wanting to say DBHDD. DBHDD has some suicide prevention milestones that I want to share with you as well. So this is the staff, a good-looking bunch here. We are also very focused on doing a lot of work at the state-to-state government agency level. So we work with DPH in doing agency agency strategic planning around injury prevention, which includes suicide prevention. We work with the Department of Corrections to train their correctional staff in gatekeeper training. We work with the Georgia Department of Education through House Bill 198. How many of you know what House Bill 198 is? Put your hand down. You know? Tell me. Okay. So House Bill 198 is legislation that stipulates that Georgia Department of Education and DBHDD will work together to establish safety plan training for certified personnel in the educational system. So think about school counselors, teachers, all those folks. So we provide the expertise and DOE goes in and execute the training. So we work together to do that. So suicide prevention approach, I'm gonna skip over this, but just know that we focus not just on suicide prevention, but also interventions and postvention. And in interventions, we work specifically around evidence-based strategies to address suicide. So we work primarily to provide the training, the clinical training for clinicians at our community service boards. The community service board clinicians are the public safety net resources of last resort, if you will. And they're the ones that do the screening. So we invest a lot of time, energy, and honestly resources in training them so that they are prepared to, one, to look for suicide risk and ideation, but also to act upon it when they address something. As well as we provide support for suicide postvention. How many folks have heard of suicide postvention before? What's that, Erin?
How you respond after a death by suicide.
Absolutely. And part of our role in that is that we contract with a number of organizations, some of you may have heard of, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, SPAN Georgia, as well as some of the smaller agencies to do postvention support. So after a death by suicide has occurred, whether it's on a school campus, a college or university campus, or in the community, we dispatch them to do bereavement support, grief counseling, to connect them to services, and oftentimes just to follow up on information. So this is a little information about the coalitions. I won't go into too much of this, but just to know that prior to 2015, our suicide coalitions existed really in silos. They really weren't attached to DBHCD in terms of doing the work. So if you can just imagine, not even just 5 years ago, there was probably a lot of people doing a lot of great things around the state, but we had no way of really connecting to see who's doing what where. So something could be happening in Fulton County, something totally different could be happening in Gwinnett County, and then come all the way to Forsyth, another thing could be happening. But when you have a concerted effort, when people really know what each other are doing, then it's much more strategic to really address suicide prevention, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And so one of the ways that we do that is through our ongoing mobilization stakeholder calls. Literally just getting on the phone, a conference call every other month and talking about what's going on in your jurisdiction. Everybody is welcome. No matter if you're doing things in your community, in your school, even in your household. If you want to get on the call and to join and share what other resources are happening, and you want to know about what resources are happening, what trainings are available to you, it's a great opportunity to get on the phone and find out what's happening in your jurisdiction. So the coalition, you can just, by this map, you can see all of the active coalitions are in teal, and those that are potential for startups are in the purple, light purple. And so you can see there's a lot of white on that map, right? So there's a lot of places where there are no coalitions that exist. And so we need your help to really be able to spark that. And so again, I'm gonna be seated at this table over here afterwards, and I really would like for you to come up and to say hello, and then give me your card, I will give you my card, and if you're interested in starting a coalition or know someone who's interested, we can make that happen. Let's start that dialogue. Okay, so the next one I'm gonna ask Teresa. We invested in some public service announcements. DBHCD, another thing that we do is we try to raise awareness, and we do that through radio campaigns, print campaigns. Right now we have one going on with Q99.7, The Burt Show. You might hear it during the show in the morning, in the afternoon. It's also a digital campaign. But we also do public service announcements that play in a lot of different places, and this is one.
This is Rob's life story. Age 22, college graduation. Age 30, marriage. Age 32, the birth of his first child. And this is Rob today, at 45. But the most important time in Rob's life? Age 20, when his story changed, because someone noticed warning signs of suicide. Sudden changes in mood, loss of interest, social isolation, putting things in order. If you're worried about someone, take action. Ask directly, have you been thinking about suicide? Intervene. Let them know they're not alone, that there is hope. Refer. Give them resources to get the help they need. You can help someone picture a different outcome. Learn more at dbhdd.georgia.gov or call 1-800-715-4225.
All right, thank you. So with that, this public service announcement is actually on our social media, it's on our DBHCD webpage, and we encourage whenever you have an event in the community, you can go to our YouTube channel, to go to our social media, and just rip us off, right? Just go and literally play it wherever you are. Play it as an opening introduction when you have an event, play it as a closing event during lunch. We just want to get the message out so that there's no more stigma, it's something easy to discuss. And it's a pretty cool PSA, I think so, right? Right? That's a little hint for a little affirmation?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. There you go. So let me talk a little bit about our youth suicide prevention program. This is through our federally funded grant by SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And we are actually in our 5th year of a 5-year grant that focuses on 10 to 24-year-olds. And part of the grant, a big part of it, is that we screen among our jurisdictional partners in Advantage Behavioral Health, Viewpoint Health, and Highland Rivers. But the clinicians are trained and they screen for suicide, and then they refer those young people who are at risk for suicide into what we call a DD Hirsch or a risk group. And so just in the last couple of weeks before I came, I think the number is actually a little bit more. I think we're approaching 4,200. In the third column, you'll see approximately 3,750 have been screened. I think that number is top 4,000 now. And so that's a huge, huge number for youth to be screened. And one of the things that we're really excited about, one is that we are very hopeful that we'll be refunded to do this again, but also we have started a protocol that works. And one of the things I want to encourage clinicians in the room is that if you have not been trained and you want to do more suicide-specific screening work, please contact us, because we find that a lot of clinicians don't get suicide-specific training, not even from schools of social work or schools of counseling or even as a psychologist, so it's limited. So DBHCD offers free clinical training, and our 2020 training calendar for clinicians will be out after Halloween. And so you'll be able to get it from our DBHCD website, okay? So I also want to talk a little bit about our Strategic Prevention Framework Project, the middle one, and our Mental Health Awareness Training Project. The SPIF, we call it, Strategic Prevention Framework, is a model that's used by SAMHSA and it's applied to substance abuse prevention. It's a community model. We're applying that to suicide, and right now we're working in all of our 6 regions around the state with coalitions and CPAWs to address suicide. This is the end of their first year. In January, I think, is the end of their first year. And then we're excited because they're expanding gatekeeper training, they're screening more for suicide, and they're making more referrals. The Mental Health Awareness Training Project is just what it sounds like. We're training anywhere and everywhere around the state, because one of the things to keep in mind with suicide prevention, it is still a young field. The research in suicide prevention really only goes back to the 1980s, late 70s. So when you think about that, there's not a lot of research that we have in terms of decades and decades, like heart disease or cancer, right? And so with that, we need to make sure that the folks who are have responsibility for screening, that they are the highly trained folks. We need to make sure that folks who are not doing clinical work but are in the communities or in school systems or in hospitals and want to do more what we call the gatekeeper level training. You don't have to be a clinician to be effective in doing suicide prevention work. You can be an administrative assistant, a student, or anyone in between. So DBHCD is also sponsoring what we call the gatekeeper trainings in QPR. How many folks have heard of QPR? I'm so disappointed. So QPR, this is a great opportunity. QPR is question, persuade, refer. And with what we call a gatekeeper training, meaning it's for everyone. And it's 90 minutes. And similar to CPR, where you learn CPR, anyone can learn CPR, right? If you can do chest compressions, you can do CPR. QPR is really of how to ask someone in a diplomatic and direct way about their suicide risk, how to persuade them to get help, and how to get them to make a referral so they can get that help, QPR. And so we're gonna be training folks to present that class at our conference that's coming up. But next year, 2020, when I was talking about the training calendar that's coming out in October, early November, we will be offering more training certification classes so people can not only train in QPR, but then they can go and offer it around the state. And it's gonna be free. If you were to come out of pocket, just so that you know, it's about $1,100 to become a trainer. But DBHCD is gonna foot the bill. So that's a pretty good trade-off, right?
Yes.
Right.
Right. Good job, crowd. I just want to give you an example of some of the trainings that we offered this year for our Mental Health Awareness Training Project. Over to the far left, Mental Health First Aid, Youth Mental Health First Aid, Assist, and Answer. The latter two are much more skill building and for clinicians. The top two, mental health first aid and youth mental health first aid, are what we refer to as the gatekeeper trainings. And we're gonna be adding QPR to this list. The project overview includes, we're gonna be providing 20 evidence-based trainings. The idea is to also to do 200 folks a year, which is minimum. Right now, I think we're approaching 400 statewide, so we have more than doubled our original charge. So the goal for next year is that if you are someone you know is really interested in community education or training, and they're really looking for an opportunity to get involved, give us a call, okay? The other is, I want to just talk about our policy. For those who work with our community service boards, how many of folks know where their community service boards are in their community? Okay, perfect. So community service board clinicians are also governed by our DBHCD policy on suicide intervention and monitoring. And so we set training standards for those clinicians to really do screening. And basically, you can rest assured, I just want to share this because I was talking earlier. Earlier this year, we went to a national suicide prevention conference in Colorado. And it was really eye-opening because a lot of our colleagues in other states don't have these standards in place. Don't have these standards. And so while there's a lot of work to do, Georgia is really on the right track. Suicide postvention activities, I mentioned earlier about the contracts and collaborations we have with American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and SPAN Georgia, as well as coalitions. I also just wanted to share a little bit in terms of, we also have a 2020-2025 strategic plan that we're working on for suicide prevention. This strategic plan, every state that is really serious about suicide prevention work generally commits to a plan. We have done so year after year since 2001. As a matter of fact, Georgia was the first state in the nation to have a statewide suicide prevention plan. That's a little trivia for you. So we are updating that plan now. It started with the process that began in March in Callaway Garden. There were a couple people who were in the room who were there. Raise your hands. So there's representation in the back, okay, I love it. And what we did was to make a call out to the best and brightest who were doing suicide prevention work or had access to people who were doing suicide prevention work, clinicians, coalition members, everyone in between, and to come in to give their input in terms of priority setting of goals and objectives. And so for 2 days, we were in Callaway Gardens collaborating and talking and discussing. There's a lot of information, a lot of data being shared. And so at our upcoming conference, which I hope if you're not able to come in September 23rd, excuse me, if you're not able to come to the conference, please put it on your agenda for the following years. So we'll be unveiling the top priorities of those recommendations. And then from that, we'll be developing our objectives and our rationale so that we can have a statewide plan that everyone can get behind. And I'm getting the wrap-up signal, all right. Just a couple of things I wanted to let you know that DBHCD is doing or has been involved in is that we've had 45 to date coordinated responses for postvention. And we generally, because at 2 Peachtree, we are not in the service delivery business, it's an administrative office. But we coordinate and contract with others in the community, and sometimes I have gone out myself. I'm a licensed social worker, but it's not something that I do. And we will sit with the family. We will go in to bring resources to them. We will connect them to services. We'll make sure that the students going back to school are connected to grief counseling. So we will, as much as we can, to try and connect people to services after a suicide death has occurred. Also, we have expanded the clinical access to training. And this is something that we're really proud of because it's really not something that you hear a lot. It's not sexy, if you will, but it is so critical. None of us would want to go to a dentist who hasn't been trained in dentistry, right? And you probably wouldn't want anyone counseling your child, family member, best friend around suicidality if they haven't had any training or knowledge in that area, right? So this is an area to where we are ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, because a lot of the evidence-based training is accessible to clinicians for free. We're even going into schools of social work in colleges and university campuses, going to the local APA chapters. And so we're talking to clinicians that have been in the field for years and may not have had this training. And the last thing I just want to bring up is in terms of mobilizing for those stakeholder calls. I just want to put that out there again, because when I first came on board in this position, there really wasn't a way for a lot of connections to happen. And so literally just by forming and having a regular scheduled conference call, literally 60, 70, sometimes 80 people will get on the call to share what's going on in their community. And that's such one of the natural low-hanging fruits. So I invite you to do that. This is for our upcoming conference. It says save the date, but the conference is closed because we're at capacity, sorry. Any questions? How'd I do?
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Walker. Appreciate that. All right, excited to announce our next speaker of the evening. It is author and local author, that is, Janine Janot. She is the author of a recent book you can find it on Amazon called The Disintegrating Student. It explores increasingly common phenomenon of bright, successful students who suddenly hit a wall with failing grades, scattered work, and emotional upheaval. In this engaging, easy-to-read book, Dr. Janot explains why your super smart student is falling apart and what we can do about it. When I met Dr. Janot over the summer, I had told her about the summit, and I said, I would love for you to be here, and without hesitation, she accepted. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Janot, followed by our educational panel, that's going to be moderated by Ruth Good, Janine Janot herself, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Erin Harlow Parker, and Ashley Cozy, an 8th grade counselor at Otwell Middle School. Janine?
I'm a Capricorn. But I don't know what that means. We really do care. We are not lazy. We care so much, it's scary. That's what our high schoolers want us to know. We care so much, it's scary. I'm just honored to be here tonight. On this important day, having this very important conversation with you. As a mom of 3, I have a 16-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 23-year-old. I'm still in it with my kids. It's rough. For the last 10 years in particular, I've been watching my own kids and their friends struggle. I'm a college instructor at Georgia State, so I see my college students struggle. And I'm also an academic student and parent coach. So I'm working one-on-one with students and families to help them in their struggle. Should probably pull my notes up here. There we go. So I was very excited to see that we're calling this From Stress to Success, because that's what was on my mind. Our kids are super stressed, and what can we do to make them more successful? So in working with the students, particularly in my coaching business, I started to try to figure out what is the root causes, what is driving the stress in our young people today, and I'm trying to find the answers. So I want to take you on that journey with me, what I found. So to hear a little bit more about what our students are saying, in my book I write, Promising Anonymity, I asked a number of high school students, what do you wish your parents understood better? To hear some of their responses. School is much harder than you remember, so don't pretend you get it, because you don't. Don't compare us to friends or family. I'll never be like my sibling. Just accept me for me. Always be proud of your child, even if what they achieve is not what you expect from them. They really try hard each day, and finding out their best isn't enough is discouraging. Checking grades every night might not give us the best motivation. Mental health issues aren't the result of bad parenting, but it is bad parenting to be afraid to look for help for your kid because you don't want the public to know. Sometimes we do need time for our mental health. I wish my parents knew that telling kids they have no real problems just makes whatever issues they're having 10 times worse. And of course, we really do care. We are not lazy. We care so much it's scary. The last statement gets me choked up every time I hear it. Over and over again, I find that once successful students who've practically given up, who seem as if they don't care anymore, really do care a lot. In fact, they care so much that when they start to struggle academically, their caring morphs into anxiety and essentially paralyzes them into inaction. As their grades decline and their schoolwork piles up, their anxiety increases until they spiral out of control and completely fall apart. They become what I call a disintegrating student. So what is a disintegrating student? Now I don't have to read. It's good. So disintegrating student is just a term that I coined to describe what I was seeing, kind of surprisingly, what I was seeing in my coaching practice. It wasn't what I expected. I was seeing our highest achievers were coming to see me struggling. The brightest kids, oftentimes identified as gifted. These are the kids who love school. Early on, in particular, elementary school, middle school, just showed up, did their homework in class or on the bus, could get A's on their tests without studying or very little studying. And they were the kids who, if they showed up in class, they learned the information. So what happens? As students encounter more and significantly more difficult schoolwork, they inevitably reach a point where they can no longer manage it easily. I call this the rigor tipping point. So as grades begin to drop, negatively affecting their attitude and self-esteem, it creates a perfect storm of external and internal pressures, which causes some of the best and brightest students to fall apart. But not every kid becomes a disintegrating student. So what determines when or if a student is going to disintegrate? There's several factors that have to be looked at here. Intellectual ability, just how smart are they? Their personality, what kind of personality they have, the coping mechanisms they have available to them, their social supports, and of course their relationships with important people in their lives, like their parents, teachers, and friends. When students start to approach that rigor tipping point for them, and it reliably seems to occur around 8th grade is a big time, and 10th grade is another time where I see a lot of students, and that first semester of college is another time. So again, the smarter a kid is, kind of the longer they can go before they hit that rigor tipping point. But when they do hit it, what happens is, grades start to fall. They're not handing in assignments. Attitude usually changes for the worse at this point too, so they're maybe not talking to their parents, or tensions in the household are rising. So parents obviously want to know what the heck's going on. So they're confronting their kid, what's happening here? The problem is the child doesn't have the answers. They're as perplexed as to what's happening as anybody else. They just don't know. So because teens and parents have easy peasy communication, no problems there, this ends well, and of course it doesn't. What happens is this really unfortunate cycle where communication that's already probably not terribly effective is being impacted, and there's a lot of misunderstanding, miscommunication that's happening between the parent and the child. And this, I find this is mostly because the stories in our heads don't match up. And if we don't have effective communication, there's really no way of knowing that the stories in our head aren't matching up. So the stories in our head are based on assumptions that we're bringing to the table. And for parents, their assumptions are that, oh, my kid's just lazy. I hear that all the time from parents. I think they've just got lazy. They're not motivated anymore. They don't care about school or college or their grades anymore like they used to. And finally, they think that their kid's just not trying hard enough. So that it's somehow in their child's control to make this better. On the other hand, the students' assumptions are that their parents care more about them, or care more about their grades than they care about them. They have a very deep-seated fear that they are disappointing their parents, because they have always been smart. And that's something their parents have been very proud of, so they've internalized that. So that's a huge concern. They fear they're no longer smart. Again, they've been super smart since they were little kids. That's part of their identity. And when all of a sudden evidence suggests otherwise, then they start to doubt themselves, and that affects their self-esteem. And they also think this is just happening to them and not to anybody else, which again isolates them more. So you can see why things start to fall apart pretty quickly. So that's the bad news. And unfortunately, it's where a lot of families find themselves these days. But there is good news, and the good news is that we can help students. We can give them skills and make improvements and kind of fortify in the areas that they need it. And what I've done in working with students is I've identified 7 different areas of skill deficits and counterproductive behaviors that are impacting our students. So I'll just go through those real quickly. The first one is organization. So our kids are having trouble keeping track of their stuff. They're losing their things. Their backpack looks like something, has blown up in it. They don't really keep track of their paperwork. They have no system for managing that. So it's usually just kind of stuffed in their backpack. Time management is a huge area that most students struggle with. And at some point when they hit that rigor tipping point, as the rigor increases, their time commitments and responsibilities start to increase. This just becomes something that if they don't develop some sort of time management system, things can start to fray at the edges. So they don't know how to prioritize tasks or estimate how long things are going to take them. Most don't keep a calendar or a schedule, and they really don't know how to, and they're huge procrastinators. In the area of study habits and study skills, they don't study in places, times, or in a manner that's conducive to learning. A lot of them don't even study at all. They also can have difficulty differentiating as the rigor gets tougher and tougher, differentiating the key ideas from less important information. Mindset is all about how they are thinking about things, and this is sort of the default way of thinking. So they're starting to approach school with a negative mindset. So this usually pushes them to kind of avoid challenges. They're getting frustrated very easily and very often. They're really hard on themselves. A lot of the clients I see are really very perfectionistic. And they tend to be sort of negative on everything. So when their self-esteem is being assaulted, it's really hard to accept that this is on me. So it's going to be on you. So it's the parents' fault, it's the teacher's fault, it's the stupid class's fault. It's outside of me. And that's all part of the mindset issue. I can't overstate how sleep deprived our kids are. This is not entirely their fault. Part of it has to do with the brain development in adolescence. So in puberty, the hormone melatonin that gets produced in the brain that gives us that sleepy feeling. Once kids hit puberty, that is not being produced in the brain until about 2 hours later than normal. So they're not getting that sleepy brain feeling until about 11 p.m. or even midnight. so a couple hours later than us. So that's one issue that they really can't control. And the other is time. They have to get up early in the morning for school. They have all kinds of extracurriculars, and then they have all this rigor. There's only so many hours in a day. So a lot of these kids find themselves staying up later and later to make sure that they can get in all the stuff that they need to get in. Screens. Screens are a really big problem. They're having a lot of difficulty self-regulating their screen time. We always say they're kind of attached to their phones. They play video games sometimes for hours on end. With some, not all students, but some students are spending more time connecting with people virtually than they are face-to-face, and that's very problematic. And they have difficulty transitioning off screen sometimes when being asked. So if you say you need to put your phone down or you need to put the video game down, for some kids that can be a real trigger to act out. So those 6 things right there would make it pretty obvious why the 7th thing is stress. That's a big issue for them. These kids are just really, they worry a lot. And this manifests itself in a lot of somatic complaints. So we're hearing our kids saying they have headaches, they have stomach aches or GI issues. And the other thing is between the lack of sleep and this increased stress, they have compromised immune systems. This is chronic, and then they get sick more often, and they stay sick longer, which means they miss more school, which means they have more stress. And I'm also seeing a lot of test anxiety, a lot more than I've ever seen before. And this is coming, these kids are hitting that rigor tipping point. They're trying to prepare for tests, and they go into tests and think they're gonna do well, and then they turn out and didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. And it might be a lack of skills. It might be they just aren't studying properly. But whatever it is, then once that happens, the next time they go to study for a test, they've already got this why bother attitude because this is not going very well. So that takes us all the way back to from stress to success. I just identified the skill areas where we can actually do something, where we can intervene with kids and help them. I can't, in the time we have here, I can't tell you what all those tips are, but actually the whole last chapter of my book are tips and strategies that address those 7 areas. But honestly, my gut tells me the bigger thing we need to be doing, and this is the perfect place to put that out, is that we need to be thinking about what is success. How are we even defining success? We live in an achievement culture. The last 20 years, parenting culture, education culture, society in general, has said, what do your data say about you? And with our kids, it's what's your GPA? Your standardized test scores, what scores you get on the SAT and the ACT? How many AP classes are you taking? Are you gonna qualify for HOPE? Are you gonna get into the college you wanna get into? They're data points. They know it, we as parents know it, teachers know it. That's not okay. We need to somehow figure out, how do we get to a point where success is the stuff that's important? When I think of education, I'm one of those lifelong learner type people. I mean, I want curiosity, I want learning, I want to grow through my education. And that's where we need to get back to with our kids. And so how I think we do that is we have a conversation like we're having tonight. And as the adults in the lives of our children, we just need to become a little more astute at recognizing the struggles that they're having and intervening before they get to the point where they're paralyzed by the anxiety that's coming out of those struggles. And that's just us having a conversation where we're agreeing on what's the problem, and what's our goal, and what do we mean by success. And if we can do all those things, and then take it one step further and help our kids to understand more about themselves. One of my approaches with teenagers is I tell them all about their amazing and awesome brain, which is fabulous. And I try to explain to them why, if they do something this way, their brain's going to do this versus if they do it another way. They need that information. It's empowering. And then it's just skill development. You know, it is wrong to try to teach time management to a 5th grader. It's developmentally inappropriate. Their brain is not meant to do that. So we need to know about this kind of stuff, and we need to be developmentally appropriate and teach the skills when they're needed to our kids. And if we do that, then we're going to have our kids have more self-efficacy. They're going to feel more in control of their lives because now they feel low control. They're going to be more motivated, and that's going to decrease the amount of anxiety they're experiencing. And that, to me, is success. Thank you.
There we go. Good evening. Are we on?
No, we're not on. Oh, we are now. Thank you for coming out this evening. Capricorn here. Okay, and I want to say welcome to you ladies, and thank you in advance for the privilege of your time this evening. I know we all appreciate it. So we'll start off with some questions here. And Erin, let's start with you. How about that? Can you tell, and again, just as a reminder, Erin is the Behavioral Health Program Manager from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Tell us about some of the common themes you see when you have children in crisis at Children's.
Sure, is this?
Oh.
So I think,
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay, there it is. I think the most common thing that I see, so first of all, I work as a clinician for part of my role at Scottish Rite particularly, and so when I see children that come in either to the emergency room or admitted to the medical floors, most common thing that I see is that the children are lacking resiliency. And when you dig a little deeper, what they're lacking is exactly what Dr. Knott said. They're lacking basic coping skills. So unfortunately, when faced with life's adversities that are highly stressful, they're more times than not, the kids that I'm working with, unfortunately, their go-to coping is to either self-harm or to attempt to take their life. And it goes from a 0 to 10 sort of reaction. There seems to be a lack of sort of in-between that I'm seeing in that. And when we dig a little deeper to get sort of what was behind it, and common themes that I'll see kids talk about is stress related to school, family, their environment, things that are going on in their homes, and in the news and sort of their outside of their home environment. Bullying is a huge common theme that comes up in a lot of the kids that I'm interviewing. But they really do lack those coping strategies that are sort of those basic needs.
Very good. What can you tell parents that they should know about suicide in children?
So one of the things, this is one of my passions that I lecture on a lot at Children's, and certainly know Walker from various things that I'm very passionate about. The biggest thing that I tell parents is that suicide is real in kids, because that's one of the big misconceptions that parents have, especially in the younger children, that this isn't something that children, especially in elementary school, think about or say, and if they do say it, they're not really serious and they kind of minimize that. So I really encourage parents to listen to the children when they're talking this. Kids don't talk about this on average. This isn't sort of your typical thing that a child talks about, and to take it seriously. But also to be looking for those, I love the PSA because it was a great sort of educational opportunity to look for those sort of common signs. The signs that were listed in there are common signs that you'll see in kids. They might present slightly different in kids than in adults, but social isolation, talking about suicide, giving things away, those red flags. And if that is happening, don't be afraid to ask the question, offer signs of hope, and you may not have all the answers, but say, I don't know what to do with this, but I know I can call the school to ask for help, or I can call my pediatrician and ask for help and figure out what to do to keep you safe, but that safety is a priority. So that's what I would say. The biggest thing is not to be afraid to ask the question. Even as a parent who does this all the time, I know that it would be scary for me to ask my own children, even though I know what to do, because having that answer be yes is very, very scary. But I would rather know the answer is yes, and I prevented it from happening, than never to have asked the question.
Janine, what is the biggest reason why students won't ask for help? Do students ask for help very often?
They
They tend not to. And that all goes back to that mindset. So they tend to have a fixed mindset, which means they're kind of protecting themselves. And one of the things that they're worried about is, I just blanked on the question for a second. Why they don't ask for help? Okay, it's late, sorry. Why they don't ask for help is because smart kids don't ask for help. So when they think of asking for help, that's putting themselves out there. That's embarrassing. They have always handled everything. So that's one of the biggest reasons they just tend not to.
And what advice would you give parents who want to help their teen?
So this might sound counterintuitive, but I think the first thing I would say is don't try to solve all their problems. So as parents, our instinct is to rescue. And that comes from a place of love and concern. But a lot of times, particularly with our teens, they don't want us to solve their problems. They just want us to listen. And if we become that person who actually listens and can repeat back to them what we feel like they're trying to say to us, they know they're being understood, then you have that kind of communication that doesn't explode, the first signs of trouble. So I would say definitely listen more, talk less.
Out of curiosity, do students know when they are hitting that rigor tipping point? Do they know when they're spiraling out of control?
They do and they don't. So the funny thing is, like if a student sees the cover of my book, the Disintegrating Student, they'll all go, oh, that's me. So they have a sense that that's a thing, but as soon as I explain to them, all the pieces come together. But again, they're so kind of self-absorbed into the fact of, I thought I was smart, and now I'm clearly not smart anymore, and I don't know what to do about it. So they get really wrapped up in the self-esteem issue. And that's the biggest thing to kind of pull them out and say, oh my gosh, you're as smart as you ever were. You just don't have the skills now to support that. They've been coasting, and they don't realize that. And the other piece of that is, what I'm asking them to do is, now I need you to actually put effort in. And that's threatening too, because a lot of these students have spent their whole life looking at people who try hard as not being very smart. So now you want me to be one of those people? So it really is it's a fundamental shift in the way they're kind of approaching, particularly their academics.
So based on your work with students, what is your biggest mental health concern today?
So surprising for me, what I'm seeing a lot of is social anxiety. And at a really young age, so starting in those 10, 11, 12 years old. And I think that has a lot to do with the amount of time that they're spending on their screens, where they're just uncomfortable sometimes interacting face to face. And to the point, I have a lot of students who are coming 16, 17, 18 years old, and they don't want to drive. they either don't want to get their license or they have their license and they don't want to drive. So it's really kind of impacting their quality of life. So I do worry about that, and they're learning about it too early. A 10-year-old shouldn't know what social anxiety is and be able to tell you, I think I have social anxiety, but they do because it's here.
Right. We're going to move now to Ashley Cozy, who is the 8th grade counselor at Otwell Middle School. Can you tell us a little bit about the student behaviors you're seeing today, and to what do you attribute those to?
Well, to mimic what you guys were saying in particular, anxiety, a little bit of stress, sometimes depression, definitely a lack of coping skills, positive coping skills that students really need. They revert to the negative coping skills of self-harming. Sometimes that's influenced by their peers or things that they've seen online. Also, I'm seeing lots of academic pressure, and with the great county that we live in, we do have a lot of academic stress in terms of grades and behavior and attendance and all those statistics. And also just the social, emotional concerns with friends, keeping up with their friends, trying to fit in, students not being kind to each other, bullying. Another piece is the social media, comparing yourself to each other, the amount of likes that you've had, the quickness of responding and putting something out on social media that you would never say to somebody to their face. So those are some things that I've been seeing at school.
How have issues changed through the years? So we know what's going on today. What did it used to look like?
So this is my 6th year as a school counselor, and I was at the high school for 4 years, and this is my 2nd year at Otwell Middle School. And I will say, when I first started, it was a lot of academic pressure, dealing with issues at home, dealing with friends. But now I'm really seeing more access to social media and how it's just really inundated how kids see themselves and how they compare themselves to others. And it's just become really competitive with academics in terms of even my 8th graders looking at opportunities for high school, and am I going to do the right pathway in high school? And we have such amazing opportunities for our high schoolers to where they can apply to different programs. But with that, there's certain honors classes. Am I doing the right tutoring? Am I involved in the right things? And then also just pressure from families in terms of, are we doing the right things? Are we starting things early enough? So it's a well-rounded approach of several different things.
So what are you doing at Otwell to help these students?
So we do a lot of preventative and then intervention, and then the prevention really focuses on connections with trusted adults. So we have a lot of upstream prevention programs that we offer at Otwell, and then I'll kind of dabble with some that we offer in the county too, but in particular we are going to be piloting a program called Sources of Strength. And it is a program, literally, if you can imagine a wheel of all different colors of strengths that students can pull upon when they are in time of need. So whether it's friends or mentors or a healthy activity, allowing students to learn about what those mindsets are through campaigns that are run through peer leaders and helped with adult advisors. And so it's just basically positive messaging, and those kids in particular saying it's okay for you to go talk to a trusted adult. I know other movements are the Whisper movement that's at Lambert, the 7 Mindsets, and then of course we work with a continuum of support with special education, teaching and learning, student support and safety. We really work collaboratively as a county, but at my grade as well. Getting your kids involved in clubs. In particular, we are an Otwell family where I work. I love my school. When you walk in through our doors, you feel the family, you feel the love, and if you're a brand new student, for example, I ask you, what do you want to do when you grow up? What are your joys? What are your passions? How can we get you plugged in here? So for example, I had a brand new student that just moved here from Arizona, and she said, oh, you guys don't have a chorus club or a chorus class, but there's a chorus club that literally starts tomorrow afternoon. It's just making those connections. Another thing that we do, basically last night we had a family night in the county, no homework. The entire county had no homework, to where we want you as a family to spend time with your kids, to get plugged in that way. We also have adult mentors that come in from our community. They are trusted adults that have been trained through student support, There's always a huge need for mentors. We have about 46 kids at Otwell in particular that said, hey, I would love a mentor, and we need to meet that need. Also, we do an intervention program called Signs of Suicide, where we go in and we talk about what does anxiety look like, what does depression look like. Here, please take this quick survey. And then we find so many kids at that level who we would have no idea, to where we have to do a soft hand approach to get mental health counselors with them support there. And then our biggest thing is just getting kids connected to a trusted adult. Knowing it's okay to talk about suicide, knowing it's okay to talk about the different interventions, and knowing that they're part of the family that really cares and connects with them.
Very good. I'm going to go back to you, Erin. Is Children's doing anything different to address the increase in children presenting with mental health challenges?
So something that I'm really excited about, in particular because for 30 years of my career I've been focusing on kids in crisis or after the crisis. And at Children's, we've just rolled out this year a new pilot program using our Strong for Life model that previously has been focused on child's physical health, and now we're focusing on the whole child, so the connection between the mind and the body. And so working with pediatricians in the community in 3 pilot areas, and then some schools surrounding those pediatrician practices. But with the pediatricians, we're teaching them in an educational platform how to have conversations at every well child visit about emotional wellness. So you begin to normalize the conversation about emotional wellness. We're teaching them to build some resiliency skills at each level of the developmental phase of the child at each of these well child visits, giving them coping tip sheets, which are on the table over there with Jody, on coping strategies. So really having education with pediatricians. They're being taught to start every pediatrician visit with, how are you feeling today? And that is beginning to start normalizing that conversation, identifying feelings. We have feelings emoji posters that are put up in the provider offices. We're taking that similar platform and working with some schools, some elementary schools and some middle schools surrounding those pediatrician practices. And the schools have identified a team of what we're calling the sort of the resilience team, and we're doing a similar teaching platform with them. A lot of the schools are already doing some phenomenal work around social emotional space, but we're sort of just packaging that same work and helping build upon that, and asking them to take one of the coping strategies that we teach them and somehow implement that on a daily basis into their classroom setting. And then we're continuing to have touch points with the school team throughout the year at their level, whatever they want. So it might be that we'll come regularly once a month and meet with the team and see how it's going, or we might meet with them by phone. And then we've also built on our digital platform, strongforlife.com/resilience. We've launched about 40 articles related to the emotional well-being of a child. So those are really exciting things that we're trying to attack children where they visit their doctor, because we know that's where they're going to school, and within their community through the digital platform. And what I'm excited about this, because I've always worked in crisis, and I'm pulling kids out of the water after they're drowning or to prevent them from drowning, we're now taking this preventative approach and figuring out how we can catch them before they get in. And the long-term game of this emotional wellness resiliency building prevention pilot is to lower the rates of anxiety and depression, which we know will ultimately lower the rates of suicide as well.
Very, very good. Cindy has stood up, so I think we're out of time. But thank you for everything that you do every day in your jobs. And I love to hear about the prevention, because it's time that we turn that around. Help, trying to find help after the disaster. So thanks again for everything.
Testing. Got it. All right, our next panel is our public safety professionals. And as they come up, I wanted to ask if you have been touched by suicide or mental illness in your family, if you would stand. I want to thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And thank you for standing. I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much. Because I think it's by standing that you end the stigma. I think that it's by taking a stand that you help other people to see that you're not ashamed of it and that it affects all of us. It affects everyone. And it's through doing that that we're able to have what we have in this today. Because 3 years ago when we started this and we started having these meetings, we didn't have this. We weren't able because we weren't talking about it. And when we first started having our suicide summit, no one was talking about suicide. No one was talking about Knight County. And I told this story then. I had a man in church that had sat behind me forever. And he thanked me for having this because he said his dad had died by suicide, I don't even remember how many decades ago. And he felt like he had walked around with an X on his back all these years. And he said, my dad was a good man. And I felt as if I've been ashamed, that he died that way. And I haven't felt like I have been able to rid this X because he's been known for his last act and not because of the man he was. And I have, he said, I just wanted to thank you that I feel like I can talk about it now. And it wasn't anything about me, but it just made me realize, because I hadn't experienced that, how he felt. Because you can't empathize if you haven't lived it. And so it made me realize that there are people that feel that way. And there are people that walk around with depression, and there are people that with anxiety, and they deal with it in their jobs. And as I was dealing with the opioid issue in Washington, D.C., I got invited to go there, and I was talking with Aetna, who is our county's insurance provider. We started talking about public safety and mental health and public safety, and the issue went further, and that's where we started talking about in our monthly meetings we have, and the public's invited to come to them, about how could we explore this further in our own county's public safety. And so Terry Hawkins, and I'm going to let Terry and the rest of them sort of talk amongst themselves about how we started looking within the county and how we deal with our mental health within our own agency. And I appreciate Major Patton and the way that they have been able to deal internally with the issues that go on in making our public safety better at dealing with it within our own county. Because if we don't know how to deal with mental health, and that's how it started, we were figuring out how could we deal better with mental health externally, and we discovered we need to deal better with mental health internally within our own agency. And that's how we started dealing with with fire and 911 and just the struggles that you deal with in keeping more employees and being able to keep them at work longer. So if y'all will, I'll let you introduce yourself and what you're dealing with and how it might help them as a public as well. Thank y'all. And your microphones are down here.
We'll start with the podium. Thank you everybody for coming. I can appreciate everybody that stood up. And I'll tell you, as first responders, and when we use the term first responders tonight, you see police and fire up here, but we also include our EMS and our communications personnel. And we really feel these calls when we respond out to the community, even on the calls where they're not our loved ones. We still feel the pain from those incidents, so we stand with you. And I'll tell you, if anybody understands the issue of stress and its effects on your personal well-being. It is certainly our first responder community. The First Responder Corps is made up of a great many dedicated men and women that have the same life challenges that are common to everyone. We all have bills to pay. We have family commitments to keep. We have bosses to appease. Some of us even have bosses here in the audience. And the thing with the first responder community, not only do we have all the common life stressors, but every day that we don our uniforms and go out into our roles, we also inherit the tragedies that befall the community as members of first responders. We bear witness to seemingly countless calls for service that may involve anything from comforting any of you during a time of great personal tragedy to defending any of you from any despicable acts of evil, or at times even defending our very lives from people that would seek to take that from us. One study on police exposure to critical incidents, which we call an critical incident that would involve death or the threat of death or serious injury. Study said that on average, as far as law enforcement, we experience 188 such incidences over the course of our career. Those kind of statistics are not without a cost to us. The toll of serving as a first responder has historically meant increased incidences of stress-related illnesses, depression, even suicide, as compared to the general population. One study shows that our rates of suicide for first responders are about 30% higher than the general population. As a matter of fact, for law enforcement, our greatest cause of death in 2018 was suicide. And you can see the numbers there from the Blue Health organization, that the things that take our lives, suicide far outpaces the other things that we have to worry about. In recent years, the first responder community has begun to address this threat to us in the same way that we would address any other threat, through analysis and training to mitigate such threats. For instance, in the sheriff's office, we issue all our people Kevlar vests. We even have policies that mandate its wear while we're in uniform to help lessen the risk of injury or death by gunfire. We have training and policies that speak to how we drive our cars when responding to calls for service, for emergency cars, so that we can operate with due regard for all of you and for ourselves as well. So it's, in light of the numbers, it's time that we also focus on the threat of stress and what that can lead to if it's unchecked in our lives. So for us, when we look at stress, we've taken on a mindset of what we call a resiliency lifestyle. And for us, what that means is, how do we prepare ourselves for the stressors that we know we're going to encounter? There's no question, we know each day we're going to encounter something that's going to cause great personal stress to us. So we've identified a lot of things we can do beforehand to help better equip us to handle the rigors of this job, and I'll just speak on a couple of them tonight. So the first one we've already mentioned for our students is proper sleep habits. The sleep studies have been done ad nauseum. The science is well defined. The sleep of sufficient quality and duration offers a great deal of benefits to cognitive functioning and emotional health. The negative effects of sleep deprivation are also widely known and have direct impacts on our ability to manage stress. Another aspect of the resiliency lifestyle that we consider are diet and exercise. Science has shown that regular exercise has a positive effect on our mood, on our perceived levels of tension. Exercise reduces cortisol levels, it stimulates the production of endorphins. When we talk about diet, we've all heard that a balanced diet provides our body the fuel that it needs to do its stress mitigation responses that it does naturally. So we tell our people to keep an eye on your diet to allow the body to do what it's going to do. We also talk recently about exerting influence over our own mindset. And when we talk about choose happiness, that speaks to a declared sense of optimism, something that is a conscious effort to look for the silver lining or at least some benefit, even in the midst of stressful circumstances. We know that a more optimistic attitude has psychological and physiological benefits to us. So it's something that we practice even if at times it's difficult. And the last thing I'll talk about is training or practicing for emergencies. So for us, training for emergencies means a kind of repetitive practicing of what would be stressful events for us in the hopes that should we encounter such an event, our performance is sufficient and it becomes easier to perform to an expected capacity, which also lessens the stress of those incidents. That starts with an analysis of how we would like to perform during such an event, and then we use that as our standard that we train toward. And the mantra that we use for training is that in a critical incident, we will fall to the level of our training rather than rise to the level of our expectation. And I understand that most of you in here probably do not routinely respond to high stress incidents, but I have to imagine that somewhere in your lives, there are stressful situations that you routinely encounter. If you adopt our model, maybe there's some analysis or some practice that you can do that can help alleviate the stress that you feel from those incidents. And that's what we would hope. If anybody has any questions or would like to explore a little further about what we do to manage stress in our profession, I'll be here after the event, and I'll be followed by Keith Burchett.
After listening to the good doctor, it has occurred to me that a firehouse is very much like a middle school. People ask what a firehouse is like, and I tell them it's like daycare for adults. So, what happens when we stop coping? This beautiful young lady, June of 2013, a young firefighter for Atlanta Fire Rescue, showed up for her shift one day, bid her shiftmates good morning. She walked through the fire station, went back to change into her uniform, and never came out. This beautiful young lady that never showed any warning signs of problems took her life that morning in her own fire station. I found this out when my leadership asked me to put together a class for our firefighters, and I thought, there's no way this is a problem for us. Our pedigree in the fire service is well over 200 years old. When our recruits start training, we drill them hard. We want them hard physically, we want them hard mentally, because when they show up to your worst day, we want them to have their best day. So we breed hardness into these young men and women from the jump. We breed into them teamwork, because that's what makes things go. So When they find themselves alone, that's when the damage starts. I had a talk with a fireman at one point in time that was struggling, and I said, "Why didn't you ask for help?" Because when I was talking to him, he was in prison. And he said, "I am the help. People call me for help. I don't call for help." So most of us in here know the statistics on suicide. This slide is a bit old. It says 40,000. I think it's probably up to about 80,000. So when we feed these numbers to our people, they say, well, that's them, that's not us. We're hard, we're tough. We don't need help, we are the help. Okay? These are the sobering numbers of the National Fire Service. These numbers are tracked by the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance and the U.S. Fire Administration. An LODD is what the fire service calls a line of duty death. It is the magic number that we refer to when we tell our people we need to train, we need to be safe. It's the number we refer to when we lose firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics. Line of duty death can be anything. It can be lost in a collapse, it can be cardiac arrest, it can be incident response in an apparatus. And up until we started getting these numbers, we thought that was the end all be all. As you can see, we're losing more men and women in our business to suicide than we are line of duty. The numbers are flawed. The numbers of suicide deaths in the fire service, which includes EMS, is only at 40% reporting for a number of reasons, okay? But it's a big problem. Our people are finding themselves alone. In our job, that's called a mayday. When you have a mayday, that's about as bad as it gets. You're alone and you're in trouble. So what do we do with our people that we've made them physically and mentally hard? That's our culture. For well over 200 years, you're the tough guy, you're the tough chick, okay? That's the way we want you. So what do? We have to change our culture. It's very difficult to change over 200 years of pedigree. So we struggle with that when we teach our people that it's okay to not be okay. We have to teach them that you are not alone. We have resources now. We have people that are willing to help. A couple years ago, I attended a conference and I was lucky enough to meet Dr. Nancy Westlink. And she and I automatically started thinking the same. She was way ahead of me because she's been in public safety and mental health for 20 years. Okay. I was lucky enough to have leadership that jumped on board with this and took this places that I could never go. And now, both Forsyth County Fire Department and Forsyth County Sheriff's Office have in-house mental health programs dedicated to public safety. This is a huge milestone for public safety, and mine and Terry's leadership obviously were instrumental, along with Nancy Westlink, to getting this thing accomplished to keep our people safe mentally. That's a big win for us. It's a big win for you, because we have fantastic people in public safety that come to your homes and come to your businesses, and we're finally starting to take care of them while they're taking care of you. But the one thing I'll leave you with, if you're suffering, if a family member or coworker is suffering, you are not alone. We have resources now to help you. If we can do it, you guys can do it. Okay?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Nancy Westlink, and I'm really proud and humbled to be here tonight with these two gentlemen. is near and dear to my heart. And when you all stood up out there, I was standing up with you. Met a beautiful, wonderful female police officer back in '08. I got her because she had a drug overdose, and she was made to come and see the shrink because of her overdose. So this is her story and my story to tell, to keep her alive and in my memory and in my heart for the rest of my life. She had many, many, many issues, many issues. And we started out in a very professional manner. She was the client and I was the clinician. And over the years, we really learned a lot about each other. And she was a client for more than 10 years with me, but she also was a friend. And she was a friend of a lot of friends. She had never married, never had children, but she was the most giving, wonderful heart that I could ever know. And she was strong even though she thought she was weak. And I continued to tell her that for years. Look what you've overcome, look what you've done. You're a master police officer, you're handling domestic violence cases, you're caring for these children, you're out there on the street doing this great job. And she would have her downs and her ups. We got to where she had a few more ups than downs, and I thought we were heading in the right direction until she had an appointment with me on January the 3rd of this year, and she had never missed one, ever. And she had suicidality, and we had made pacts over the years that if I texted her and she was running late to an appointment and she did not respond to me within 30 minutes, I was going to be sending out someone on a welfare call for her. She understood that. She got it. And that Wednesday, her 8 o'clock appointment came and went. I texted her, I said, "Are you on the way?" And I still have the text. It's the last text I sent her. Didn't hear anything. I finally called one of our local chiefs, who I knew personally, and I asked him to please find out if she was okay. Within 20 minutes, Chief called me back, and all he said was, "Nancy, it's bad." And I knew. She had been very sick. She'd gotten pneumonia. She had been in the hospital, had been out of the hospital for about 3 weeks. Her Doberman had just died. She was feeling horrible, and she had a lot of medication. And my heart wanted to say, I bet it was an accident. I bet she was in a lot of pain and she just took too much. Until I went to the memorial service that her family and friends had. Her only living close relative was her brother, who did confide to me that there was a note, so that there was no question. And my heart said, I knew her for 10 years. She knew me for 10 years. We knew each other well. We loved each other. She took me shooting. She taught me how to shoot a gun. So I guess I say this to share this with you all, that there's no way you're ever going to know that somebody's going to do it, because they're just going to do it. And part of my guilt was, why didn't I know? If I knew her that well, why didn't I know? But I now know that it was going to happen sooner or later, and there was not one thing I could have done to prevent it. So I know the feeling that you all have, that you've lost someone to this epidemic that we're having right now. For all the reasons we've heard tonight, I think the bottom line here is, if we can connect people, if we can give them a sense of purpose, if we can lift them up in some way so that they understand that they matter to themselves and everybody around them. We have to have these conversations. And I don't ever want to go through that again. And that's why I'm so proud that your Forsyth County is putting together a behavioral health service program dedicated to the men and women in uniform. It's something I've been doing for over 25 years because it's been so needed for so long. And my hope is, and what I tell these guys when I'm talking to them, and it's purely selfish, selfish motivation that I have, because frankly, I'm you guys. I'm a civilian, and I want to be able to sleep at night. And if they're out there healthy and doing their jobs and having their purpose and giving back to their community in a way that heals and helps them remain on that job as long as they can stay, that's where I want them. So if it can be a place where I can help encourage that, I'm happy to do it. So my services are almost always free. I don't charge for this. I have a private practice, but I don't charge for this because there's no money here that could fix this. I just want to be present. I want to be available. And I want to just be the person that they can come to and just unload and talk and process and figure out what they need to do next. Because when you get that going, you're in a pretty good place. So I thank you for your time tonight. I know we went over a little bit. If you have any questions, I think we can hang out a little longer if you want to talk to us. Thank you.
Very much. All right, well, if we didn't get already a great bit of information this evening, we're not done yet. We have exciting people to introduce you to close out our session here today, the 3rd Annual Suicide Prevention Summit for Forsyth County. But local teens right here out of South Forsyth High School have and are doing amazing things. Hannah and Charlie Lucas are teen siblings who created the Not Okay app for people struggling with mental health. Yes, I said teens created an app. 2 teenagers from Georgia have created this amazing app that's dedicated to help people that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed. This Not Okay app allows users a simple press of a button that will send a text message up to 5 pre-selected contacts to let them know a user is struggling at the moment. Hannah and Charlie are going to tell us about this amazing app and what it can do for you and your family. Let's introduce, last but not least, Hannah and Charlie Lucas.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Hannah Lucas.
And I'm, oh, is this on? I'm just gonna. And I'm Charlie Lucas. I know how technology works.
And we're the creators of the Not Okay app.
So our mission here is to make it easier for people to ask for help when they're not okay.
Exactly, and this includes for whatever being not okay means for you. Because we understand that there are infinitely many ways to be not okay in today's society.
Unfortunately, mental illness and depression makes it very difficult to ask for help.
Okay, so who here has ever typed out a text message to their close friends or family members asking for mental, emotional, or even physical support, only to delete the text before it ever gets sent? Come on guys, raise those hands. This is interactive, okay? But don't worry, because me too.
We've made it super easy to ask for help with just the press of one button.
Okay, so if you've ever struggled emotionally or mentally, the point is you're not alone.
At least 1 billion people worldwide struggle as well.
And that's just the proportion of people who actually admit to it.
But our Not Okay app is a simple solution so that people can actually get the help that they need.
The Not Okay app alerts the user's friends or family or even therapist or recovery partner, whoever they trust, whenever the user is not okay.
It's based off the science of mental health safety plans and peer support.
Okay, so I bet you guys are wondering why an app. I mean, that is the most random thing to think about for some girl crying in her room in the middle of the night, right?
So everyone has a phone nowadays, so why not use it for something more productive than playing Candy Crush or updating your status every 10 minutes? See y'all.
It's simple. All you have to do is download the app, register, and pick up to 5 trusted contacts. These people can be your family, your friends, your therapist, your recovery partner, whoever you trust. So that when you're not okay,
you simply open up the app and press the not okay button, and it will send a text message to all 5 of your trusted contacts at once with your current GPS location and directions.
boom. Okay, so tall, gorgeous, wonderfully, curls Pop and Charlie. Why are trusted contacts so important? Like, really, what's the point? Like, I don't get it.
I'll give you the answer shorthand. So trusted contacts are important because friends and family members are usually the first ones to know when something is off, even by a little bit.
Okay, so how does it work? I'm glad you asked.
Let's hope this video works.
I think we have to.
Yeah, someone has to click on it.
I got this, man. I'm a genius.
I believe in you.
The Not Okay app is so simple and easy to use. Just see for yourself how fast it is to set up on your own device. Download the Not Okay app from the App Store or the Google Play Store. Once downloaded, open the app and follow the prompts to create your account. Once you've submitted your information, you will receive a cell phone verification. If it doesn't come through, simply just tap Resend Verification. You will also receive an email verification through your email provided. Give Not Okay permission to use and access GPS. Follow through with terms and conditions. Give Not Okay permission to access contacts, and using your contact book, go through and add up to 5 trusted contacts for the main user of the Not Okay app. The trusted contacts will then receive a text notification to accept or decline the responsibility. When the user is in need, they can tap the red Not Okay button. Once button is tapped, trusted contacts will receive a text notification and click the link to accept or decline to reach out and help. Trusted contact can either text, call, or physically check up on user. GPS location and directions provided to exact location. The user is then text notified that the trusted contact is able to help. User can update their current status by tapping the green Not Okay button, which will text notify the trusted contacts.
I know, we're incredible. No, I'm just kidding. That app's amazing. But if you don't, we really are. Look at what the doctor has to say.
The Not Okay app is a fast and simple way to reach out for support and help. Anyone struggling with anxiety, depression, or drug or alcohol abuse should download it and use it.
Okay. So here are our numbers. So you know, because this is a professional thing, so we've got to show numbers, right? Okay. So I don't think you guys are ready for this. So far, we've had over 80,000 users so far.
And they've sent over 52,000 Not Okay alerts. And we've even had some pretty cool endorsements, like
Mental Health America,
the National Alliance on Mental Illness,
Lady Gaga's Born That Way Foundation,
and even the American Association of Suicidology.
Okay, so now I bet you guys are all wondering, why in the world are 2 teenagers so interested in advocating for mental health? Well, I'll tell you. Okay, so on to me. Okay, so take a quick look at me. I'm a senior at South Forsyth, SoFo Nation, South Strong, let's go. Okay, I'm 5'2", but I like to act like I'm taller. Pretty decent grades, but that's because I have lowered my parents' expectations exponentially. And I have pretty decent hair, if I do say so myself. But what you don't see is that I have a chronic illness that causes me to faint, and I struggle with anxiety and depression. Okay, so it all started a long, long time ago, my freshman year of high school. I was super, super stoked to go to high school. Like, I don't know how many times I've binge watched High School Musical. Like, I don't even know why I thought my high school experience was gonna be like that. Like, I can't even sing, guys.
Yeah, it's sort of horrible experience.
Yeah, but the second week of high school, I went in, I was super excited, and then bam, I was fainting and I was on the floor passed out. I didn't know what was wrong with me. It became a thing. I became that girl in school. I missed over 200 classes my freshman year of high school. It was a disaster. I had my own code blue, my own wheelchair in the nurse's office. I was bullied, harassed, and even sexually threatened by guys in my class who found out that I fainted. Yeah, I had a wonderful freshman year. So all of these factors caused me to spiral deeper and deeper into depression. I self-harmed, I struggled with eating disorders really badly, and eventually one night it got so bad that I had a suicide attempt. But luckily my gorgeous mom was there to save me that night. And that night when she saved me, I realized and I wished and I longed for an app where I could just whip out my phone, tap a button, and instantly tell my friends and family that I was not okay.
That's where I come in. So this entire time when Hannah's been passing out, I was sort of relegated to the second child position. I did all the chores for Hannah. I carried her up the stairs. I attempted to catch her when she passed out.
No, he didn't.
I didn't, but I tried my hardest. I didn't, but like whatever, it's fine. So when Hannah told me about this idea for her app, the first thing that I said was, let's go. Because ever since I was about 7, I've been teaching myself how to program and how to make apps. Because what did you guys do when you were 7?
His nickname is tech support.
You guys probably did normal things when you were 7. Haha, I didn't have life.
He still doesn't have life, I assure you guys.
So this was one of the only things that I could actually help Hannah with. Because I couldn't catch her when she passed out. I couldn't drive her to the doctor. I couldn't buy her medicine. So this was the one thing that I could actually help her with. So on that very day, I started working on the wireframe of the workflow, which is basically how the app is going to look and how it's going to work. And after that, we made this really long 15-page presentation to show to our parents, to show them that we were actually really serious about making this.
Yeah, at the end of the presentation, we were like, thank you for considering our investment. It was the most cringiest moment of my life, I promise you guys. I don't know why, but we decided to put our stuffed animals next to our parents to make the audience look bigger and more realistic.
Like, it was bad. We saved 10 minutes at the end for questions. It was bad.
It was a dark moment in our lives, but luckily it worked because we ended up officially launching January 31st, 2018. Woo-hoo. Go us. And yeah, we've been lucky enough to have a 501c3 supported by some pretty incredible board members.
We have several executives from Crisis Text Line,
Hope for the Day,
and the American Association of Suicidology,
to name a few. And we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. We're expanding Not Okay to include mental health screenings users can take to their doctors to start the conversation on how they're doing mentally and emotionally as well as physically.
And we're tying into Crisis Text Line, so if the trusted contacts don't respond or they don't respond within an allotted amount of time, then the user will get a text from the Crisis Text Line asking if they're okay.
We're also creating Spanish and French translations of the app, and we plan on expanding to Canada, the UK, Ireland, and Australia, with an estimated projections of over 600,000 downloads by the end of next year. And that's only if we reach 0.5% of our target market, guys.
And we're gonna stay committed to our mission of actually helping people and making it easier for people to reach out for help.
Okay, so now I want you guys to think of every wonderful thing you just learned about us. And turn to your neighbor and say, hey buddy, how you doing, boo?
We're serious. Remember, this is the South. Turn to your neighbor like you're in an old-timey church and say, how you doing?
Okay, and the trick is to actually want to know your neighbor's honest response and to actually give your honest response. If you're not having a good day, be like, I've been better, but it will get better. You know, see what I did there? See what I did there? Optimism.
This is an interactive thing.
Oh, you guys are done? You guys aren't talking at all. It's their bedtime, Charlie. Okay. So let's pause for a few seconds to think about what you actually did. It was simple. You just turned to your neighbor and said, "How you doing, boo?" And you wanted to hear the honest answer, right?
But when was the last time that you actually wanted to hear their answer?
Or actually gave your honest answer, actually thought about the question, you know? Just a little food for thought. So the whole point of this is you're not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You'll never be alone. That's why peer support is so important. It allows you to reach out to your group and find people with similar experiences and get help from them, and maybe even help someone who's going through the same thing that you did.
But it only works when you actually talk about what you're going through in an honest, optimistic way. Because, I mean, look at my brother and I. I'm honest about my experiences, and he's honest about his. And through that, we're able to help so many more people.
So, ask yourself. Oh my God. Cool. Ask yourself, how can you help the people in your life?
Or how can you receive help from the people in your life? Because right now, I could really use a hug. Okay. So thank you guys for your time. And yeah, if you want to support us further, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or if you have a little extra cash in your pocket, you can always donate,
Because
we are a nonprofit. Okay, guys.
Double jinx, you cannot speak for the rest of your life.
Thanks, guys.
Somebody needs to hire them quickly.
Yes, please, I'm looking for a job.
I know you're proud of them. Thank y'all for coming. We only went over by an hour, but I also want to thank James C. Wright. He got called today and he came and recorded this for us. It'll be on a YouTube channel. We'll put it out there, but thank you so much for being here and helping us out. Thank you for helping us end on a happy note. I mean, that is gives us a lot of hope for the future. It really does. So thank y'all so much. And thank you all for being here. I appreciate that. It was wonderful presentations, and thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.